Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Can't wait to hear what I'm going to say. My name's Bob Darrell and I am alcoholic. And only through the grace of a God that I was afraid to believe in, that I've accessed through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, good sponsorship, and a persistent and consistent commitment to the primary purpose of helping other alcoholics, I haven't had a drink or any mind or emotion altering substance since October 31st, 1978. And for that, I owe you my life, and probably as important, if not more, my freedom. Abstinence from alcohol without freedom for a guy like me drives me. It's so insane that guys like me commit suicide sober. So I'm not only sober, but I'm free. And we'll talk, maybe we'll get to what I'm free of later. I'm delighted to be here. I want to thank the members of the committee for the privilege of coming down here. This is a weekend where I'm spending a weekend with a lot of old friends. The speakers here are amazing. You have some great speakers here. Steve, Wayne is always makes me laugh, and Bob, I've known Bob. He was a member, lived in Vegas, member of my home group for a while, and he gave a great talk. And Steve was, I heard the spirit of Scott R. in Steve's talk today, and it was really, it was very cool for me. I really enjoyed it, and it's been a great. And Ralph's fourth step, Ralph's very good with that. And it's been a great convention right up to now. I just had a funny experience sitting up here. I was doing a little meditation I always try to do before I have to do this. And I was, as I'm doing it, I hear the voice of the convention. He keeps repeating over and over again, the green awning is your friend. The green, and he's over and over, and I hear that, I thought, that voice, I know that voice. And all of a sudden I went back like 4 decades to when I was a kid and ran away from home to go to a rock concert, hearing the same voice go, do not take the orange acid. Do not take the orange acid. And it was like, I'm looking at him like, that's the guy. It was the weirdest experience sitting here. I have a disease called alcoholism. It almost killed me, and oddly enough, I almost died from something I didn't even understand or know that I had. All I could ever see was the symptoms of the disease, the arrests and the drinking myself sick from this, but I could never see what was really killing me. And I couldn't see it till I was, even get a glimpse of it till I was sober a long time. I believe, and there's no way to prove this, I believe that I may have had alcoholism before I ever found alcohol, like I was some kind of freeze-dried alcoholic waiting for it. And I believe that because of what I know of this disease of self-centeredness, this malady of my being, is that I wasn't right before I ever picked up a drink. Now, I don't know why I wasn't right, because I listened to AA speakers who come from alcoholic homes where they're just really abused and had terrible, horrific childhoods, And they came out of that with all the same feelings that I had, in a family that loved me and would have done anything and never abused me. I mean, they were just wonderful parents. But there was something about me that just was so internally focused, even as a child, that I looked out at a world that seemed very distant from me. And I remember in grade school having these feelings of not fitting, and I couldn't have put them into words, but there was just an awkwardness about me around people that other people didn't seem to have. And it seemed to me like everybody just kind of had something I didn't have, like maybe I was born without the social merging genes or something. They got a pill for that now, I heard. They got a pill for everything. But I didn't feel like I fit, even as a young kid. And I couldn't put my finger on why. So I became what it talks about in the big book and into action. Before I ever picked up a drink, I started living the double life. I started becoming the pretend guy, the guy who pretended he was okay, the guy who pretended he was cool, the guy who pretended he wasn't afraid, the guy who pretended he was tough, the guy who pretended he was a part of. And those of us that have done that, you develop a squirmy anxiousness about being found out. And I just felt like I was coming from behind all the time. And when I started hanging around with a gang of kind of wild kids, I wanted to fit with them so desperately that I would have done anything to be a part of. And no matter what I do, I'm always coming from behind. I can't act tough enough. I can't shoplift enough. I can't cuss enough. I can't do anything enough to get me to a point where I start to feel like they look. Something's missing in me, and it's driving me, and yet I don't know it. I don't know what's driving me, but I was a driven little kid. And one day we pulled a burglary in the neighborhood, and we broke into this house. Some people were gone, and one of the things we stole was some bottles of whiskey, and I didn't know nothing about it. I'd never seen my parents drunk. Looking back, I don't even think I understood that it got you high. I don't even think I knew that. But I'm with these kids. I'm almost 12 years old, not quite, coming up on 13, and I just want to belong. I just want to feel like they look. And we started to pass that bottle I remember the label to this day. It was a quart bottle of Seagram 7 around. And I'm watching. When you're a pretend kind of person, you got to watch people and then try to emulate what they do in order to fit. And what I see happening is they pass this bottle around. A couple guys that took a real big hit off of it got a lot of attention from the other guys. So by the time it gets to me, I'm in. I'm going to take a big hit. I'm just glad it wasn't cat urine, because I'm in. And it gets to me, and I take this big hit. Oh my God, and they never told me that it just feels like it's burning your insides out. And somehow, I think I was so afraid of what they'd think if I threw it up. I kept it down, and when the burning stopped, something started to happen to me. And I could tell you a lot of things that happened that day, some of them good, some of them bad, but the thing that happened is a hook was set in me. And a hook was set in me because for the first time in my life, I was with these guys that I never felt like I was good enough for, tough enough for, cool enough for. And all of a sudden that just seemed to fall away from me. And I really felt a connection with these guys. I really felt like I was a part of. It was like I don't have to pretend anymore. I could actually come out and play. There was a tremendous sense of freedom in it. And then I got in trouble, and it was a bad deal. But unbeknownst to me, getting lit up from that moment on just seemed to move into the center of my life. And over the next many years, if you would have asked me what was important to you, I would have told you a lot of different things. I might have told you school, I might have told you my family, I might have told you my girlfriend, I might have told you the band I was in, I might have told you the sport I was playing, I might have told you all kinds of stuff. But if you'd have watched me, you would have seen that the only time I seem to look like I'm okay is when I'm about half lit up. And it seems like I just live for it and just exist between opportunities to get lit up. And by the time I'm almost 16 years old, I'm in a lot of trouble, and my God, I'm not even quite 16 yet. And I find myself standing before a juvenile court judge for the third time, same judge, and this is bad. And I'm there, and I don't know why I'm there. If you'd asked me why I was there, I would have told you a bunch of crap. I'd have told you about snitches and about a society that wants to curtail real freedom, real human freedom, because they can drink at my age in Europe, for God's sakes. You know, I'd have told you all kinds of stuff like that. But the real reason I'm there's something wrong with me. And I don't know what it is, but every time I go out to party with my friends, I have this inability to shut her down when you should. I always go a little bit too far. I can't just get drunk. Some of my friends get drunk. I can't just get drunk. I got to get drunk. And when I'm drunk, there's some stuff seems like a good idea. It's not a good idea. And I don't know how that, I don't know that I got alcoholism. I don't know that I have the single definitive characteristic of alcoholism. And that is an allergic reaction to alcohol. That, as our book says, manifests itself in a phenomenon of craving. That every drink I've ever taken in my whole life, from my first drink and the effect when I felt that, to the last drink, has always made me feel like I'd like to have another drink. Every drink of alcohol I've ever taken lights something up inside me that just yearns for more of that feeling. And I have always had that. I have never taken a non-alcoholic drink or a social drink in my life that ever did anything other than that phenomenon of craving for me. But I couldn't see it. And I didn't know what was wrong with me, but I'm in trouble. And my mother and father are in that courtroom because my mother and father loved me. And my mother and father would have done anything to help me. I am sad to tell you that years later, I broke their heart over and over and over and over again, to the point where they would have nothing to do with me eventually. But at that time, they'd have done anything for me. They would have mortgaged their house, which they did later to protect me, because they needed money for stuff. My mother went to work later because of my fines and stuff, and they'd have done anything. And the courts they were talking about juvenile. Probation was talking about sending me away to a place with a horrific reputation for abuse for kids. And my mother and father were in that courtroom trying to make a deal with the judge. And instead of going to the place with the bad reputation, I had to go somewhere else and live for a while. And I go to this new place, and I'm the new kid on the block. And I've been sober for a while now. And I'm pretty good at staying sober when I'm licking my wounds. And I've been sober, but I'm a little overdue to get lit up. I mean, I've been doing time here for a while, and I'm at this new place, and I don't fit with any of these guys. So what do you do if you're like me and you're always coming from behind? You have to target the cool kids. You have to target the guys that look like they have the juice, the guys that look like they have it going on. And I targeted some of these kids, and I wanted to fit with them. They looked like they had it happening. When you're secretly nothing, you got to look for the people that look like there's something, and hope if you hang out with them, some of their something's going to rub off on some of my nothing, right? And I'm talking to one of these guys who's one of the leaders of this group of guys, and I'm telling him my story, and I'm telling him about the trouble I'm in and the gang of guys I run around with. And you know how we are. We're not legitimate. I have to enhance it a little bit, make myself look a little cooler. So he's getting the version of the Super Bob on steroids version of Bob, kind of, and he's listening to me. And then he says something to me. It was music to my ears. He says, "Oh, so you like to party, do you?" I said, "Yes, I do." I thought maybe he'd pull out a pint or something. You know, yes. And instead, he starts bad rapping my drinking. He starts saying to me, he says, "Well, you drink that alcohol. You can't control that. That stuff make you crazy." Now, he's backing me right up, because I loved alcohol. At that time in my life, I drank, my drink of choice was 151 rum. That gets you there right away. I mean, There's no social drinking of 151 rum. Let me tell you, there's no social drinking of Everclear either. You drink that stuff for one reason only, to get downtown now. And I love that. And he's bad rapping it, and he's backing me off. And then he says something to me that I didn't understood what he was talking about at first. He says, what if I told you I could give you something that'd make you feel as good as that rum? Only they won't smell it on your breath. You won't slur your words. You won't stagger. Nobody will even know you're high, and you keep a whole week's supply in your shirt pocket. What would you say to that? I don't know what he's talking about, but it's like, sign me up. And he introduced me to drugs, and I got to tell you something. I'm a real alcoholic. Alcoholics should not do drugs. It's bad. Oh my God. I do drugs alcoholically. I mean, I do them like a crazy person. I was listening to Steve talking about doing amphetamines. Well, I got into amphetamines, but in no time at all, I'm the guy that if you left me alone in your car and you went in to get cigarettes, by the time you come back, I'm trying to take apart your dashboard looking for microphones from the police, you know, because I'm nuts. I remember we went to New York City one time to cop some stuff, and I was absolutely convinced that, do you know how many taxi cabs are in Manhattan? I thought every single taxi cab was a cop. I mean, that'll make your head blow up. I mean, and I was so whacked from that stuff, a guy came along and said, try some of this, and I don't even know what it is, but when the throwing up stopped, the spinning in my head just went, and I could think straight, and he introduced me to heroin, but I'm a real alcoholic. Alcoholics should not do drugs. I just slammed it, and me with it against the wall, and I did that for a number of years and came full circle back to alcohol. And I don't know for sure, but I've always suspected that my little several years soiree into that was for the same reason that Dr. Bob possibly did high-powered sedatives, barbiturates every day of his life for 17 years, because it bought him extended periods of abstinence. But Bob's reaction to alcohol was exactly like mine. Every time I picked up a drink, that same thing happened to me, is I couldn't stop. I remember I was trying to be in this band. This is one of the amends I've never made, too, because I don't know how to find this woman. But I was in a band, and the band leader was this very nice lady, and she was the lead singer and keyboard player, and she owned all the equipment. And so I'd just show up with my guitar, and we would play these bars where if you were in the band, you got to drink for free. Well, you can't do that to me. I mean, because I'm the guy taking a nap in the booth before the evening's over. So her whole job became find me diet pills so I'm not passed out by the second half of the evening. And that poor woman was just so afraid. She was searched diligently, couldn't find anybody to replace me for a while, and then finally did. And I was out of there. I made her life miserable. And I don't even know what's wrong with me. I don't know that I have this physiological reaction to alcohol. But it ruled me. Isn't it odd that a guy like me could be driven by something and never see it? And one of the reasons I couldn't see it is that it uses my own mind against me. And I don't know that it's doing that. In all my powers of rationalization and justification, and it uses it against me. There's a test in the big book that it says if you don't think you're an alcoholic, try this test. Try to go over to the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking. Try to drink and stop abruptly. Well, I don't think I would learn anything from that because of the way my mind works. If I go into a bar to do that, and I'm going to go in there, okay, I'm going to see if these AA people are full of crap or not. I'm going to have 2 drinks, that's it. Shut her down, go home. Now you can't smoke nothing, take nothing, 2 drinks, that's it. Well, halfway through the second drink, it's going to become very apparent to me that this is a bad test day. Because the game would be on. That game, I didn't know that game was on. I can't leave now, for God's sakes. Or there'd be some girl in the bar, and I'd look at her and go, oh, she could be her. Can't leave now, I've got to have a drink with her. Or some Joe or some friend of mine would come in, always have something good going on. I can't leave, I've got to have a drink. Tomorrow would be a better test day. And tomorrow, if I tried the same test again, I am absolutely sure halfway through that second drink, as the effect of the alcohol starts to hit me, it's like a key turns in my head, and everything in me gets behind whatever is necessary to make me think that the one more drink is my idea and absolutely appropriate. And I didn't know that I was being punked out by an allergic reaction to alcohol. Why every time I started to drink, I would just burn my life to the ground every single time. I've heard this years ago. It's really true. That for an alcoholic of my type to pick up a drink, it's like having sex with a gorilla. You ain't done till the gorilla's done. And you can tell yourself all you want. Me and the gorilla are just going to have a dance. No, you're not. No, it's going to be bad before it's over. But I don't know that. I started hitting in the years that I was more trying to be chemically balanced. I started going to treatment centers, and they'd ask me a weird question. They'd say, "What's your drug of choice?" What do you got? I mean, I don't know. No, I drank vanilla extract. In jail one time, I broke open a magic marker and huffed it, just hoping something might happen. You know what? I mean, drug of choice. What they should have asked me is, what happens to you when you ingest alcohol into your system? What happens to you when you start to feel the effect of the alcohol? Do you break out in an irresistible yearning for more of that effect? And that, Dr. Silkworth says, defines us. It is what makes me an alcoholic. That and what makes me a chronic alcoholic, because there's alcoholics, I believe, and I've seen some, that their alcoholism ends at that point. And those are the people that our book talks about on the bottom of page 20. Those are the guys like that I've seen that I grew up with that used to get in a lot of trouble from drinking. And they come to their senses one day and realize that, you know, they can't drink. They can't even take the first one because they always go too far. So they make up their mind and mean it that they're never going to drink again, and they don't. And they live normal, productive lives. Now, I have gotten to the point where I was every bit as serious about not drinking as they were. I've gotten to the point time and time again where I've sworn to myself with everything in me and meant it. My God, I'm never going to touch that stuff again. I can't go on like this. There's guys I went to high school with that are buying houses, and I'm sleeping on somebody's couch, and I'm smarter than them. And my life is pathetic. And I would swear to myself. But there's something about chronic alcoholism that's insidious, that I don't know what's wrong with me. It doesn't make any sense to me, because I seem to have such an amazing willpower in some areas. I mean, when I'd make up my mind about something, you couldn't stop me pretty much. I used to live a lifestyle that was insane. I used to work at in this factory that was a hellhole. I mean, it was horrible. And I'd put up with it because I needed the money to drink. And I'd get out of that place, and there was a bar. It was like midnight, and there was a bar across the street that closed like you had to by law at 2 o'clock. But if you were already in there, they'd let you stay until 5 a.m., right? And sometimes even later. And sometimes I would go in there and I would drink until 5 a.m., and then I would come out of there, and I'd have to go to court, or I'd have to go do something in the morning. When I got even when I was on the day shift, when I got rotated back to the day shift, I would drink in there till 5 a.m. and then be at work at 7. I mean, I'm still drunk. And I'd go to work, I'd drink a whole bunch of coffee and go to work. And I'd do that time and time again. I mean, some of us live a life of where throwing up is just part of the deal. You know, you throw up and it kind of gives you a new start for a little bit. You know, it's not a bad deal. And what we do, the willpower that it takes to feed the beast is amazing. So I couldn't understand why it is after 3 or 4 treatment centers, after you finally get it, you've been bludgeoned into an acceptance of that I can't take the first drink, and I know that, and I've sworn to myself and mean it, and 7 or 8 months later, I'm back at it again. Now, if you did that once or twice, you're a knucklehead. You do that 10 or 11 times, there's something wrong with you. And I did it over and over and over again. The last couple years, it was so horrendous that I stopped getting back up again. You know, I was the guy that I was accepted to Ivy League colleges. I was the guy that would have been valedictorian in my senior class if I hadn't been arrested the week before graduation. I was the guy who had all the potential. I was the smart guy. And I can't stay sober. And I don't know why. I don't know what's wrong with me. And the last couple years, I'd get physically sober again, and I'm not the guy that's out beating the bushes to get the good job and the girlfriend and the nice place to live and a Harley and getting a nice guitar and all. I'm not that guy anymore, because you start to know the truth. You start to get it. Like, what's the point? Because I know what's going to happen. Why should I work like hell to try to build this up when every single time, no matter how much I tell myself I'm not going to burn my life to the ground, every single time I do. And there's an aspect of my powerlessness that is hideous, and it's that I don't have the power to resist the first drink. I mean, I can for a while, but if you're an alcoholic of my type, the question is not if you're going to drink again. If you got untreated alcoholism, the question is when. It is a dead certain inevitability with a guy like me. And there are some cases where extreme willpower is used and we don't return to drinking, and then at 3 years sober, guys like me blow our brains out, because where are you going to go? Where are you going to go if you're not drinking and you can't drink and yet you're suffering from alcoholism? Because if you're an alcoholic and you take away the alcohol, what are you left with except the ick? You know, and the ick eats my lunch. And I am everything it talks about in that book: restless, irritable, discontent. I'm everything on page 52. I don't know why, but I am. And I suffer from deep depressions sometimes when I'm sober. I've been diagnosed as clinically depressed and given the treatment for that. And I know I'm standing here, that it was a misdiagnosis. And I'll tell you why that is evident. Because the treatment for clinical depression, the best it did was give me a little bit of relief and put me on a holding pattern that eventually wasn't enough, and I had to go back to drinking. It wasn't until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous and started this treatment for alcoholism that I started to be relieved of the bondage of self, which was really where the depression came in. It was the depression of a guy who, when he quits drinking, just gets his emotions, his future, and it's bleak looking. I've never looked at my future where it looked good. And it's bleak looking in my past and all the guilt. I get my very life just kind of on me, like that creature in that movie Alien that attaches itself to your face. And what happens is, after a while, it feels like somebody stepped on the oxygen hose to my being here. After a while, I feel like I'm smothering here. After a while, it's not that I yearn to get drunk. I yearn for freedom. I just want to bust out. I just can't take this, because all the emotions and the god-awful loneliness, and alcoholism is a lonely business, of being locked up in me just wears on me day in and day out and week in and week out, until I can't see anything except the possibility of ease and comfort, the possibility of freedom. And Silkworth says something very interesting in our book. When he talks about after a time we can't differentiate the true from the false. The reality of the last couple years of my drinking is that there was no ease and comfort and freedom in the bottle anymore. There hadn't been for probably the last 3 years. The last 2 for sure, I drank and I felt sorry for myself. I went on crying jags. It was pathetic. I sank into deep depressions. If I was sleeping on your couch at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'd call my parents up and cry into the phone about you didn't raise me right. Just pathetic stuff. I'd call ex-girlfriends at 3 o'clock in the morning, which they're just delighted to hear from me drunk at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd call my sister, and this is not a party, this is pathetic. It's horrible. I don't bathe anymore. I loathe myself. I can't even submerge the feelings anymore with alcohol. All I can get is oblivion. And I drank, the last couple years, I just drank to blot Bob out. My whole life kind of reduced to the most amount of blot Bob out for the least amount of money. And I drank a lot of Richard's Wild Irish Rose because when you do the math, it and Thunderbird would come out on top a lot. Occasionally I'd find a sale on a cheap vodka, but most of the time it was wine. As far as the most proof alcohol for the least amount of money. Because that's all it mattered to me at the end. And here's how alcoholism punks me out. That's my reality. That's the truth. Yet you get me sober for 6 months with restless, irritable discontent. 6 months of the untreated spiritual malady of alcoholism. And I will start to fantasize that I can party like I partied when I was 18 and 20 years old again. In spite of a unacceptable reality that has been a dead horse now for years. But my God, I don't want it to be a dead horse. So desperately that I convince myself that there's a party where there is no party. And if you're like me, you don't know that till you start drinking and feeling sorry for yourself. And then the bottom falls out and it's really awful. And that was the last couple years of my drinking. And I was in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was in and out. I was in 11 places of recuperation, or what refers to it in our book. I never thought of them as that at the time, but I was in 11 of those places. I got sober over and over and over again, and relapsed over and over and over and over again. And I didn't think I came. There was a period when I first started coming around Alcoholics Anonymous when I was about 20, I just had a tremendous disdain for you. I don't know what you were, but you were weird. You were not, first you were very, very old. I mean, very, very old. And you were glad to see me, which I don't know what that, listen, I'm not gay, so back off, buddy. I don't know what that's about. I don't know what the guys wanting to hug me and stuff. It was just, I don't know what that's about. And you were enthusiastic, and you laughed at things that didn't make sense to me. You were like some kind of cross between Amway and the Salvation Army. It was very, very weird. You were very weird to me. And if you're new, if you're sitting here and you're new, AA is a strange place. I mean, it really is. It's the only place I've ever been to because of our second tradition, where you come in a big shot and work your way up to servant. I mean, everywhere else, it's the other way around. You come in as servant, you come in, you sweep the floor, hopefully you're a boss one day. Alcoholics Anonymous, it's the other. AA is the only place you'll ever find where the sicker and more decrepit you are, the more we like you. Matter of fact, you'll see old timers fight over the real sick newcomers. No, I want him. He's my. It's the only. AA is so different from any other place. Like churches, a lot of churches. I used to go to churches sometimes. I'd go just about anywhere when I was desperate, and I'd go into a church. And if you join a church, and you're a sinner, they want you to join the church. But after you're there for a while, they kind of expect you to stop sinning. I mean, it's implied in the brochure. I mean, really. Not Alcoholics Anonymous, we're not like that at all. We go, sin as long as you can stand it. Matter of fact, we'll sit in coffee shops and go, do you know what so-and-so's doing? Yeah, if he lives, he'll help a lot of people with that one. Really, it's really different here. I watched the sobriety countdowns. I watched the newest guy in the room, the guy that's the most raw, the guy that loathes himself the most, the guy that's the most depressed and hopeless, and we give him a gift for being, for burning his life to the ground. I mean, that's nuts. It kind of makes you want to go out and do it again. And more than any of that, I would sit in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous in the latter years, and I would sit there at times, and my God, I can't go on like this. And I really need help. And I would listen to you. I started listening to you, and I started watching you. And in very short order, I became convinced that whatever's wrong with me, it's not really the same thing that's wrong with you. Because I listen to you and I watch you now that you're sober, and my God, you're wonderful. I mean, you're a little wacky, but you're great. I mean, you laugh a lot. Everything's funny. There's nothing funny in my world. I mean, you're grateful for everything. Oh, I don't even like anything. I don't like me. I mean, you love everybody. I love everybody. Love everybody. Oh, jeez. Oh. I came to a conclusion based on knowing about me and how I get when I stop drinking. I feel like I'm doing time and I'm depressed and lonely. I got a mind that when I stop drinking just gets on me and will not leave me alone. I mean, my God, it wears me out. That's why a lot of times newcomers that haven't done anything in AA except go to meetings and not drink, by the end of the day, they look worn out, because it's like you're trapped in a very small space with a bunch of ADD kids that have overdosed on sugar and none of them like you. It's because it's just all the time. And by the end of the day, I'm just like worn out. I get terminal illnesses like every third or fourth day. I imagine that I'm dying of something. I don't get headaches. I get brain tumors. I mean, I can't tell you how. It's so pathetic. I can't tell you how many just heartfelt deathbed speeches I've rehearsed in my head. I mean, I've had every disease you can think of. Isn't it? I'll tell you something funny. Hypochondriacs imagine that they have every single disease on the planet except alcoholism. They never imagine that they have alcohol. Anything else? Steve was talking about rickets while it was still on the table. I could see rickets, but I couldn't. You don't think alcoholism. I remember I was convinced at one time. I ended up in this hospital. Because I hurt myself sometimes when I'm drunk. And I ended up in this hospital, and they were stitching me up, and they had to x-ray me. And I kind of sobered up. I was in there several hours. And I'm sitting in the waiting room, and they got this rack of pamphlets, medical pamphlets. And I grabbed, heart disease and diabetes and all this stuff. And I grabbed one of these pamphlets, and it's a pamphlet on the 7 warning signs of cancer. Well, I'm kind of sober. My head's clearing up a little bit. I start reading this pamphlet. And one of the things it talks about is continuous, reoccurring, unexplained bleeding. And I'm reading that, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm bleeding out both ends. I mean, I throw up blood sometimes. And I thought, oh my God, I got cancer. It's like such a revelation. It's metastasized to my brain. And that explains the weird things I do and can't remember them. It explains how sometimes I just almost get in these comatose depressions. I got a brain tumor pressing on my brain. Oh my God. It explained my whole life. And I remember I had this fantasy that went on for quite some time about one of these days, they're going to discover that I have cancer. They're going to take me to the cancer ward. They're going to notify my parents, who had thought that I was a bum, and they're going to come running over to the hospital, properly ashamed of themselves. Oh my God, Bob, we thought you were a bum. We didn't know you had a brain tumor. And they would tell all my ex-girlfriends who thought I was a bum, and they'd come running over to the hospital, properly ashamed of themselves. And if they were really ashamed, I might forgive some of them. I'm not sure. I don't know. Depends on their level of sincerity. And I ended up in a treatment center. And I told this doctor, I says, I think I have a brain tumor. And they put me through a bunch of tests, and I had a bleeding ulcer and a hemorrhoid. Well, that was, this is the bizarre part. I remember when they told me that, like I wanted a second opinion. Like, this is the kind of ego I have. My ego doesn't care if I'm gonna die, as long as after I'm dead, everybody realizes how wrong they were about me and I was right. I mean, I got that kind of ego. And consequently, I can't get nothing here. Because I sit in the rooms, and the problem is I got too much of me between me and you. And I don't know it. See, one of the things that happens to me when I stop drinking is I get right about everything. And there was a great psychiatrist who nailed me when he'd worked with hundreds, maybe thousands of us actually, and he said the reason that a lot of us never get better is that our egos are so distorted and so sick, even though we have no self-esteem, that we have an inability to listen to anybody in order to hear anything new. I can only listen to see how I'm already right. And if you're like that, you're a closed system. You're unsponsorable, you're unteachable, you can't even hear anything in a meeting. And the only people that you'll listen to is somebody that agrees with you. And if you're new and somebody agrees with you, they're not doing very well either. No, that's not a put down of people that are new. That's just part of the territory. I mean, when I was brand new, a guy named Joe Wright cornered me after a meeting, and he said something that was hilarious, and it should have, a year before, I would have been fighting mad. I wasn't. He said to me, he says, "Kid, you need to take step 3. And I told Joe, I said, "Joe, I can't take step 3, I don't believe in God." He said, "You don't have to believe in God." I said, "Joe, that's what it says. It says we made a decision." I read it right off the wall, right there. It says, "It made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him." I said, "I don't understand God or even know if there is a God." He said, "Listen, kid, if you'll turn your will and your life over to this chair," and he points to a chair in the meeting room, he says, "I guarantee you a miracle instantly." And I thought, okay. I turned my will and my life over to the chair. What's the miracle? He said, he got a big smile on his face. He says, "Oh, the miracle would be your life's no longer in the hands of an idiot." And I didn't even get mad. I just thought, yeah, that'd be right. Yeah. Because if you would have followed me around and observed me as people did, or maybe as your loved ones have observed you, objectively, you would easily come to the conclusion that whoever's making decisions for this person is out to destroy them, yet it never looks that way to me. I have this amazing ability to justify myself. You know what the problem with self-justification is? Self. It's the root of my problem. Matter of fact, any word that has self in it's probably not good for me except for selfless. Self-justification, and I can't see it. There's a guy in Vegas who died with cancer with quite a few years of sobriety named Dale. Dale was a gruff old guy, but I really liked him. He always said something that would really get me at meetings and make me think and look at stuff. And he liked me, and he came up to me after a meeting, and he said to me, he says, "Listen, kid," he was a gruff old guy. He says, "Listen, I'm going to tell you some things that if you abide, it's going to save you a lot of pain and grief." He said, "Kid, I want you to know if you're explaining something, if you're justifying something, if you're defending something or rationalizing something, kid, I want you to know you're wrong. Because you never have to explain, defend, justify, or rationalize what's right." Joe told me that probably close to 30 years ago. Dale told me that close to 30 years ago, and I haven't found an exception to that yet. When the separation of alcoholism has been reduced, and I'm cool with you, and I'm cool with God, and I'm cool with me, there's nothing to justify. When I am selfishly self-seeking, there's all kinds of stuff to justify and defend. You know, I've been thinking, I was just talking to my friend Sandy before the meeting, and I've been thinking about, I talked to Michelle about it also sometimes. I talk to quite a bit of people actually, because it's a piece of business in my life and I worry about it. I worry about doing this. And there's an inherent, over the years, I've really, really started to get a good view of my enemy here, this ego, that the book equates to self. When it says self-centered or egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays, I know how squirmy and devious it is. I know how its insatiability. I know how it's a trickster. One of the greatest tricks it's ever pulled is to convince me it's not there. And it's devious. And I have gone through phases in Alcoholics Anonymous that I could only see in hindsight, where my ego has taken the traditions, taken the steps, taken my knowledge of the book and used it to taken my years of sobriety and made a flag to wave to grandize myself out of it. It's taken the fact that I asked to speak a lot and make part it on the flag. And it's all self stuff. I remember I went through this phase where I did it with the traditions, I did it with the big book, I did it with the steps. I went through a phase where, man, if I could go to a meeting and catch somebody with a traditions violation, it was frickin' Christmas. You know what I'm saying? Man, I couldn't, I just loved it. You know what? There's this expression in Texas they call puffing up. You know, I puff up. I couldn't wait. And my ego even took my knowledge of the book and the steps and used it where I wouldn't approach people to help them. I'd approach them to show them how they weren't right about their program and I was, right? Now that's pathetic, but I went through a phase like that and I have a tremendous fear, I guess, and respect for this ego. And I also have a tremendous love and appreciation and gratitude for God's grace. And sometimes I feel like I'm in between the two, stuck. Sometimes I'm really on the grace of God side, and other times I kind of have this natural default position of slipping back into self. I don't even have to do anything. It's almost like it has a bungee cord on it. Just left unattended, I automatically just kind of go back into me again. You know, I've had to, God, it's just and the reason this scares me, this has the potential to feed something in me that should be starved. And I worry about it a lot. And if I have a couple people in my life, my sponsor and Sandy, a couple people, I've asked them, if I look like I'm getting weird doing this, please save my life and tell me about it. I've watched a lot of people go south on this. I've caught myself at little times developing like a persona around this. And our book says that we lose ourselves in the beginning of chapter into action by living the double life. I don't want to have a stage character, right? I want to, my existence and my recovery and my staying here depends upon a program of rigorous honesty, a genuineness that is ultimately freeing. When I can be genuine, I am free. It's the double life that keeps me a hostage, probably more than anything. And I worry about that. I don't know how I got off on that track. In 1977, I was sentenced to 2 years in a state penitentiary by a very kind judge who sentenced me and then stayed the commitment and said, we're not going to carry this out. We're going to put you in a place called the Ark House. And it wasn't really much of a treatment center. It was like the bottom of the food chain for treatment. The reason they were putting me in there is because I'd been in St. John's and St. Francis and Gateway and Amicus House, and none of those places would take me anymore. and it was the bottom of the food chain, and it was run by a guy named Chuck, who worked with down and out guys and guys out of prison, and they had about 200 people there, and bunk beds as far as you can see, and I went to live in this old abandoned bank building that they'd converted into this rehab on East Ohio Street in Pittsburgh. And I went in there, and I'm getting out. If I can stay in there a year and get good urinalysis reports and good PO reports and make the restitution, I'm a free man. If not, I'm doing 2 years. And I went in there with a sincerity about staying sober. But when it says in our book, lack of power is our dilemma, that's me. When it says in there comes a time when you have no human defense, when there's no mental defense, there's no defense against the first drink, that I can't, self-knowledge doesn't help, determination doesn't help, willpower doesn't help, nothing helps, that eventually I go back to drinking, and I did, and I came, and it was hideous. I went back to drinking so desperately seeking some ease and comfort, some relief, some freedom from this awful loneliness that had been on me now for a couple months, I'm worse now that I'm drinking. I'm depressed, and I come to in this park, and this doctor at a place called Gateway after examining me, had told me, it was about a year before or so, he said, I was in my 20s, and he said, you're young enough, kid, and healthy enough that you could go on like you're going on for another 5 years or more before it actually killed you. And I came to in the park that day, and I remember thinking about 5 more years of this, and I thought to myself, I ain't doing 5 more days of this. And I made up my mind, and I wasn't doing it for attention or pity or anything. I made up my mind to kill myself. And I just wanted out. I just wanted to make this stop. I was in a trap I couldn't spring. Drinking was awful, and not drinking was awful. And suicide can start looking like a good deal to a guy like me under those conditions, because I don't see another door. I don't see door number 3. And I'm not alone in this, because for a couple reasons. One is I don't think it's alcoholism. I don't know what it is, because I've been to the psychiatrist, and they don't seem to know what it is either. Everyone I see thinks he knows, but they don't really know. And I don't think AA would work for a guy like me, because I've probably been to 150, 200 meetings by this time. And I don't think Alcoholics Anonymous would work for me. But my God, I am so not alone at that. I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of alcoholics. I go to a detox. I talk to guys down there every week, and I've never met anybody yet that came to AA at that place in the hopelessness and despair and loneliness and depression of alcoholism, who looked at the 12 steps and went, oh yeah, that would work. Nobody says that. Nobody, it doesn't, they don't, the thing about AA, it doesn't look like it'll work till after you do it. And then we all say the same thing. We said, oh, I should have done that years ago. But it doesn't look like it'll work until you do it. And AA doesn't work like 5 shots of tequila. AA works like that creeper pot that they had back in the 70s. Do you remember the creeper pot? You'd smoke that stuff, and you'd think, man, I got beat. This ain't no good. And then about 30 minutes later, you can't even stand up. It's like it just creep up on you. And you do all this stuff in AA, this ain't even doing nothing. And all of a sudden, you find yourself in a situation that you absolutely know would have gotten you drunk the year before. And not only have you stayed sober through it, you learn something. And you start getting these glimpses that something's happening here. Something is happening here. And Alcoholics Anonymous started to change me. When I had this major surrender, and I started buying all these actions and doing all this stuff when I was new. And then something very hideous happened to me. Harry Tiebout talks about the amazing recuperative powers of the alcoholic ego. It grew back. And it came back, it came back clever, and it came back smarter, and it came back more insidious. And I don't even know it, but I'm starting to battle with depression again, all this other stuff, because it had grown back. And at a little over 4 years sober, I went back and I went through the steps again, and this time meticulously followed the process in the big book. And it changed me. Not once and for all, because chronic illness isn't like that, but it got me on got me in a different direction. You know, one of the things that had happened is my ego grew back. I was the guy who knew everything again. I was the guy you couldn't tell nothing to. I was the guy that would go to meetings and just know what's wrong with everybody. I was the guy that judged everybody in AA. I was the gossip guy. It wasn't really gossip. I was giving you information you needed to know about these people, in case you ever wanted to help them. And I'd become that guy, you know, and I was in a bad spot, and I went through that fourth step, and I listed all my resentments, which are really, in effect, all my judgments, all the things I know I'm right about. And I had a lot of them in AA, a lot of them. And some from my past, because I had never done this process this way before. And then when I got to This Was Our Course, the book asked me to do something, to look at this from an entirely different angle, to put myself in their shoes, and to look at it through their eyes, and to see how these people who had harmed me were perhaps just like me, spiritually sick. That I had to realize, I had to see myself in them. And this is not like a well person looking down on a sick person. This is a sick person looking right across the table at a guy that's exactly like him. One of the best demonstrations of that I've ever seen was in the movie Bucket List. There was a scene in there where these two guys, Morgan Freeman and Jack Nicholson, are suffering from a horrendous regimen of chemotherapy, and it's brutal. And they're not given the chemotherapy on the same day, and they're not sick on the same day, and they're not sick exactly the same way. The symptoms of the chemo varies a little bit from day to day and from person to person. But there's this one scene where the one guy he's just a mess, and he's irritable, and he's the kind of, you don't even want to be around him. But the other guy's not looking at him like he's irritated. He's looking at him with love and compassion, because he sees himself in the guy. He gets it. He sees through the behavior to what's really going on. It's the veil is lifted, and he's awake, and he gets it. And he has compassion, from the Latin cum, meaning with, and passio, pain, is that I can sit with your pain. And I started to look at everybody in my life that I judged like that. And my God, if you asked me after that fifth step what the exact nature of my wrongs were, I would have told you how wrong I'd been about my mother and father and sister and the women in my life and the bosses. And I can't imagine a greater ego-reducing proposition than to list every judge, everything you know you're right about, every person you secretly suspect owes you an amends, and then to see and really get it in here, connect the dots, really get how wrong you'd been about every case. I can't imagine a greater ego-reducing proposition. And if you're new here, or not so new, maybe you're entrenched in yourself 20 years sober, and you can't stand to be wrong, you're going to have a hard time in sobriety. Because a lot of what I have to do and redo in order to keep God active in my life is to move me out of the way. The problem, it's recurring, is that I always get, once again, too much of me between me and you, and too much of me between me and God. And I can measure my distance from God by measuring my distance from you. I can measure my distance from my own decision in step 3 by the amount of opinions and judgments in my life. On a good spiritual hair day, I look around me and it's all good. No offense, Wayne. And it's all good. On a bad spiritual hair day, I see what's wrong with you, because I've climbed up, unbeknownst to me, onto the throne of judgment again. And I keep trying to reduce self and turn my consciousness towards God. And I over the years, I've just in the last probably 8 or 9 years, I think I've really started to trust him. I think I was afraid of him for a while. I don't know. When things would happen, all the fear would rush back. And now when things happen, I get a little anxious and I worry. But underneath all of that is I know something. I know that God loves me, and no matter what, he will take care of me. He's always there for me.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
There's a principle that I think some of us build our lives on, and the principle is that the power behind us will always be greater than the seeming obstacles before me. And that I am wrong. And the knowledge of knowing I'm wrong, when something appears on the radar that looks like, oh, this is going to be awful. I got 500 instances in my life where I've been wrong about that, where I can go, well, maybe not. I don't have to go crazy, because maybe this is just like the other 499 times that I thought it was the end of the world and ran around like the chicken going, the sky is falling, and maybe it's not really falling. And the knowledge that my perception is wrong sometimes saves me from me. And I know that God's there for me. If you're new, I want to welcome you to Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know if you've identified with anything I've shared tonight. I don't know. If you haven't, there'll be another speaker this weekend that you'll connect with. We got a wrench for every nut in Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you do identify with me, God help you. You need AA very, very badly. Thank you for my life.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out. in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.